Yes, it's Round the Table, your favourite slow TV radio podcast from the meeting point for students of English, not only in Bilbao, but throughout the world. And welcome to episode 100 of the podcast. And this week our topic was perfect and perfection. And coming up this week we have some interesting phrases that have come up in recent conversations, not all on the topic of perfection. We also have our special guest, celebrity guest speaker, and shortly before that we'll be looking at some of the vocabulary that appears in the monologue. Then we'll be looking at an interesting word, or rather an interesting word group. And then if we have time, we'll be having a true story for you. So to begin with, let's look at these phrases from recent conversations. The first one is, it's more trouble than it's worth. I think that's self-explanatory. You make a lot of effort and there's very little reward. Basically, that's what it means, but that is the expression that somebody was looking for. It's more trouble than it's worth. You need a bit of give and take. This was in a discussion of looking for the perfect relationship, and there is no perfect relationship. But you need a bit of give and take, a bit of understanding and a bit of tolerance. That's what it means. By trial and error, how we sometimes come to a final design, a final result, by testing things out. That's what it means, and there's the expression that somebody was looking for. You do it by trial and error. So you make it once, you try it, see if it works, you change it a bit and try it again. So by trial and error. To have your feet on the ground is to be very sensible and very in touch with reality. And the opposite of that is to have your head in the clouds. You are living in a fantasy world. I am in two minds about it. This is just an expression that means I am undecided. I'll take your word for it, which means I will believe you. Now, often this is used in a kind of sarcastic way, really, that it means I'll believe you but temporarily until I get some better evidence. So it means I believe what you're saying, but sometimes it's quite temporary. And to take something at face value is to accept it at a superficial level without looking any deeper and without doing any research into the validity of it. You take it at face value. It took me a long time to realise. I don't think that needs explaining, but it was a structure that somebody had trouble with, trying to come to the correct way of expressing this idea. It took me a long time to realise. Now here's an interesting one, to go down a rabbit hole. This is used a lot with regard to technology these days, where people start researching something and one thing leads to another thing, and each piece of research leads to another piece of research. And in the end, you're looking at some really strange website on the internet. That's going down a rabbit hole. And it often leads you to the conclusion that the earth is flat, or all the pigeons are working for the government and spying on you, or some crazy concept like that. That is to go down a rabbit hole. There's another one, is to get sidetracked. And I've recently heard people using the rabbit hole one in the way I would use sidetracked. Sidetracked is just like when you're in a conversation and one thing reminds you of another and you start talking about a different subject. You go off of the main subject and you have to come back to it. So you get sidetracked, like we often do in our meeting point conversations. On Wednesdays, we often talk about military history. For some reason, we always get sidetracked onto military history. And then we've got two more at the end here. To make a pig's ear of something, or to make a dog's dinner of something. This is to mess something up, if you remember the phrasal verbs from last week. To have a complete disaster. You're trying to do something and it just comes out all wrong and it looks terrible and it's just completely wrong. You made a pig's ear of it, or you made a dog's dinner of it. So those are the phrases that came up in recent conversations. Coming up in a minute, we've got the monologue, but first, let's have a look at some vocabulary that will appear in the monologue. The first word is struggle. You may have seen this before. It's to make a big effort to achieve something or to deal with a problem. So you might say that many people struggle to find work in this day and age. So struggle is to do something with a great effort and difficulty. Originally it was a kind of a fighting verb. Burden is one that we looked at recently. Something you have to deal with in life. Originally it was something that you would carry, so metaphorically it's something that's difficult for you to deal with. Harsh, an adjective that means severe, strict, or unpleasant. The next one is flawless. Flawless is another way of saying perfect, because a flaw is an imperfection. So with no mistakes is flawless. So her performance was almost flawless. Compromise is another one that we've looked at fairly recently, is to find an agreement which suits both sides, but it's not perfect for either side, but it's sufficient for both sides. So it's to come to an agreement. So a successful relationship requires compromise. And strive is another one. To make a great effort to achieve something. So you can say athletes strive to achieve their goals, for example. So you can strive for a noun, or you can strive to with a verb. So it means to make a great effort. Okay, so now we know some of this vocabulary. Let's see what our celebrity guest speaker has to say this week.
Perfection is something many people admire, but it can be difficult to define. What one person considers perfect may seem ordinary to someone else. This raises an important question. Is perfection actually possible, or is it simply an ideal that encourages us to improve? While aiming high can motivate us, expecting perfection may lead to disappointment. Perfectionism is often associated with success. Athletes, musicians, and professionals frequently achieve great results because they pay close attention to detail. However, perfectionism can also create stress and anxiety. People who constantly focus on mistakes may struggle to appreciate their achievements. Success without satisfaction can be a heavy burden to carry. Modern society often seems to have little tolerance for anything less than perfect. Social media presents carefully selected images of successful careers, beautiful homes, and exciting lifestyles. As a result, many people compare themselves to unrealistic standards. Expectations have risen so high that our ordinary lives can appear dull and inadequate. the pursuit of perfection can encourage harsh self-criticism and a fear of failure. Some people avoid trying new things because they worry they will not perform well enough. Creativity often requires experimentation, mistakes, and learning through failure. When perfection becomes the goal, people may become too afraid to take the risks that lead to growth and innovation. Advertising, films, and social media often promote narrow standards of beauty. Famous people are expected to look flawless at all times, despite the fact that nobody is perfect. Constant exposure to idealized images can damage self-esteem and make people feel dissatisfied with their own appearance. Many people dream of finding the perfect partner, having a model family, or landing their dream job. Real life, however, involves compromise, patience, and continuous learning. Unrealistic expectations can easily lead to disappointment when reality fails to match the fantasy. Perhaps the real challenge is knowing when to stop chasing perfection. Striving to improve can be healthy, but expecting perfection from ourselves and others often creates unnecessary pressure. In many areas of life, accepting imperfection may lead to greater happiness, confidence, and satisfaction than the endless pursuit of an impossible ideal.
And your interesting word or your interesting word family for this week are the words related to card. Card is usually a thick piece of paper. So it's like paper, but just a bit thicker. And quite often they're quite small pieces. So we have a business card, for example, or a postcard, which you send someone when you're on holiday. Or you can send Christmas cards and birthday cards. So they're thick pieces of paper. Now, related to that is cardboard. So if you take the word card and add it to the word board, you get cardboard. Normally we would use cardboard as in a cardboard box, a type of packaging, and it's a board and it's usually made of different layers of paper, layers of card put together. So that's called cardboard, and it's very similar to card, but maybe a bit thicker. Now, another word which you might have as a false friend, you might want to use the word carton, as we say in English. But we don't use the word carton to describe the material. A carton is like a box, usually containing a liquid. So you get a carton of milk or a carton of orange juice, that kind of container. What you might think is a brick, but we don't use the word brick. That is a carton. I think the thing that you have eggs in as well. I think that's an egg carton. But it's not describing the material. Cardboard is the material that we're talking about. And then another related word to carton is cartoon. Normally we think of funny drawings or animated cartoons like Mickey Mouse. But the original cartoon, how it relates to the card word, is because it was the rough sketch, the plan when somebody like Michelangelo or Leonardo were going to paint a fresco on a wall, or if they were going to paint a painting on a canvas, they would prepare it on a piece of paper because it was much cheaper to do the practice one on the piece of paper. So the cartoon was really the preparation for the main work of art. and it was on paper, and that's why it became a cartoon. And then that became other drawings, and then the caricature, humorous type drawing, and then it went to the animated type drawing. So cartoon has a much older origin. So if you're in a museum and you see a cartoon by Leonardo da Vinci, it's really not very funny. Another one which is related is the word chart, which is normally a map or a diagram sometimes to give information. Now, the original charts, if you look at it etymologically, the difference between a chart and a map was the word map comes from cloth and the word chart comes from paper. That was the original difference. So charts, now we have different types of charts showing the oceans. We have flow charts, which is a type of diagram, bar charts and pie charts. They're all different types of diagram giving statistics and things like that. And related to that, we have the word charter, which is something that has a document on paper granting some kind of rights. This is where you get the chartered accountant, a charter flight, and a charter school, which I was trying to think of last week. A charter school, which is one that is semi-private and semi-public. So they have some kind of written contract behind them, and that's where the word charter comes from. Another one that you might not know is cartridge. The cartridge for the ink in your printer is a cartridge. Originally, that was used in guns, a little paper tube full of gunpowder, the explosive element. So from the gun cartridge, you can quite easily see how you have the gunpowder replaced with a different type of powder, and that's where your ink cartridge in your printer comes from. Another one that you might not know is this word carte, which is, of course, it's a French one, but it does come into English sometimes. If you have à la carte, if you're eating à la carte, it means from the menu. So you're reading it, you've got the list on a piece of paper, basically the menu. There's another expression which is carte blanche, which means you are free to do whatever you like. So imagine we were talking about the charters where you've got the contract on the piece of paper. The carte blanche is the blank piece of paper. There's nothing written there, so you have complete freedom to behave in any way you like. That's what carte blanche means. So there you are. Cardboard, cartons, cartoons, charts, charters, cartridges, and carte blanche. I told you it's a very interesting word. And of course, the French language has always had a great influence on English. However, there are many people that have always been very suspicious of the French, as we will see in this true short story.
More than 200 years ago, during the Napoleonic Wars, Britain and France were bitter enemies. Along the northeast coast of England, people lived with the constant fear of invasion. News travelled slowly, rumours spread quickly, and many believed that French spies could be hiding almost anywhere. One wild winter night, a violent storm swept across the North Sea. Powerful waves crashed against the coastline, and the wind was so strong that nobody dared leave their homes. Out at sea, a ship was fighting for its life. In the darkness, it struck the rocks and broke apart. When the storm finally passed, the townspeople walked down to the beach to inspect the wreckage. Broken timbers, barrels, and pieces of sail were scattered across the sand. At first, it seemed that nobody had survived. Then they noticed a small figure lying among the debris. The survivor was soaked, exhausted, and wearing what looked like a military jacket. Nobody recognized him, and he was unable to answer any questions. He only made strange sounds that no one could understand. The villagers quickly became suspicious. The uniform appeared foreign, and the survivors' behaviour seemed odd. Because Britain was at war with France, some people began to wonder whether he might be a French spy. As the story spread through the town, more and more people became convinced that this was the only possible explanation. The survivor was taken into town and questioned. The townspeople wanted information about French military plans, but they received no answers. The stranger simply stared back at them and made strange noises. His silence only increased their suspicions. Eventually, the townspeople decided to put him on trial. Fear and prejudice had already influenced their judgment, and few people considered the possibility that they might be mistaken. After a short hearing, the verdict was announced. The stranger was found guilty of being a French spy and was sentenced to death by hanging. According to the legend, the townspeople never realised their mistake. The mysterious survivor was not French, and he certainly was not a spy. In fact, he was not human at all. He was a monkey that had somehow survived the shipwreck. Nobody knows exactly how the animal came to be on the ship, but the frightened townspeople appear to have mistaken it for a foreign sailor. There is no reliable evidence that a monkey was ever tried or executed in the town. However, the tale became famous throughout Britain, and the people of Hartlepool became known as monkey hangers, a nickname that survives to this day. Whether true or not, the story remains a fascinating example of how fear, misunderstanding, and the influence of rumours can sometimes lead ordinary people to believe extraordinary things.
And there you have it. That's why the people of Hartlepool are known as the monkey hangers. To this day, they are still known as that by their neighbours. Well, hope you enjoyed episode 100. Don't forget, on Friday the 26th, we'll be having an extra meeting in the office. End of term, glass of wine, a bit of cheese, and various flavour crisps. I went to Lidl this morning. We have lots of crisps for you to sample. So that's the end of term get together, the gathering, put your name on the list. And coming up this summer, next month, it will be 10 years since we opened the meeting point. Another anniversary. Today, the 100th episode of the podcast. Next month, 10 years of the meeting point. Next week's topic of conversation will be tribes. I'm sure we'll have more fascinating conversations down at the meeting point. And if I don't see you there, have a good week. Till next week.